For our first session, let's welcome Leonardo Varela, Assistant Professor at the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana, Bogotá. Welcome, Leonardo.
So, hello everybody. Hello Nick. Hello Maylene. Hello Felipe. And hello everybody. Well, I'm not alone. I have Maylene and I have 3 more people. I feel blessed already.
Hi, Andres, by the way. Andres Felipe. Nice to see you.
Yes, Felipe. My boss. My boss here with his watching eyes over me. All right. Yeah, probably he wanted to double check whether my off day, I was doing something on my off day at work. That's great. So, shall I get started then?
Yes, let's start sharing your presentation. I'll leave you with that. And of course, let me help you with that.
Right.
All right. So, dear
you
Leonardo, the
watching?
stage is yours. You may begin your presentation right now.
Yeah, good. So, okay. Are you watching my screen, Maylene?
I am.
That's it. So, let's get started. So, welcome to this presentation, which is about this, a 5-tier guide to assessing productive skills in CLIL. And I have a lineup. Let's see if we can see the lineup, if it works. Yes. Well, the idea is the creation of a 5-tier guide to developing assessment materials in CLIL. The approach, well, it integrates sociocultural and academic underpinnings. And the added value, well, hopefully if there's one, is that you can use some of my elements to assess language learners or pre-practice teachers as well. All right. So that's sort of the rationale behind this. Okay, good. So for those unaware, what is CLIL? Because, I mean, some of you might not know what it is. So this is the definition of CLIL. Is content and language integrated learning. It is now more focused on meaning than anything else. Probably before people were torn between language and content, but now this is more leaning towards having meaning-focused sessions, all right? And it's favored in non-native language environments and in countries where language is increasingly in contact. Canada, Spain, Colombia now, Singapore, Switzerland, I mean, those places where there are many languages in contact, all right? Now, a quick quiz. A successful CLIL lesson should combine 4 C's. Which are they? So if anybody wants to give me a shout and call out a letter, I'll be very happy. Is it A, B, or C? It could be you, Maylene. Anyone wants to give a shout? Is it A, B, or C? Are you listening to me? Are you? C. All right, it's a C. Yes, well done. C. And this is what we have to do with CLIL. So we have to sort of bring together communication, culture, content, and cognition. There are other C's sort of springing up. Some people call competences, some other people are calling care, intercultural care, and things like that. But these are sort of the basic ones. Now, 5 tiers. The first one is how should we go about assessing productive skills? The second one, how should we go about assessment in CLIL? And number 3 is assessing content and cognition, which might be harder than we anticipate. Number 4, assessing culture, which is also very difficult because how can culture be assessed? And the last one, we are more in tune with that one, which is assessing communication in CLIL. So how should we go about assessing productive skills in a CLIL scenario? Well, first, we have to bear in mind that productive skills are meaning focused. And that's why we have to focus more on them than on reading and listening. And we have different ways to do this. So you see, we have different activities. We do use different methods and techniques and with varying purposes, all right? So that's why we need to focus on this because it's where we can help students most. Okay, now, how can we do this? We have to bear in mind this, which is not my invention. It's been going on for a long time. And we need to bear in mind the language knowledge, the topical knowledge, and the personal characteristics that has some sort of bearing in the strategic competence, and this is affected by the students' emotionality, all right? So we teachers, we focus pretty much on this language knowledge. We are slowly migrating into the personal characteristics. We're bearing that in mind from the student's perspective. And in CLIL, topical knowledge is of utter importance, especially when it comes to content and cognition. That prevails, all right? So that needs to be borne in mind, into consideration. All right, this is something that we also have to anticipate when we deal with speaking and writing assessment, and this has been going around for a long time. We already work on grammar knowledge, on textual knowledge. We work on functions. We definitely have a more, let's say, like a better command of the sociolinguistic knowledge, because we've been traveling more, because we have contact with language users from all over the world. Probably 25 years ago, Latins, we didn't have as much contact with this, but now we are increasingly becoming better at this. And we also need to bear in mind the strategic competence, all these elements that have to do with how students respond to the tasks they have at hand. So this is also something very important to bear in mind. 30 years ago, we only focused on these three, but now the increasing demand for communication all over the world, and invites us to focus more on this. All right, next. Now, when it comes to doing this, we are very good at placing this, the context. We already know about this, like the internal goal setting, the characteristics of this. But now in CLIL, we need to draw attention much more to this, to the world knowledge. And this is the beauty of CLIL, that it transcends any language operations, which we are already very good at as teachers, but we need to create classes, experiences, ecosystems where students integrate more the world knowledge into whatever competence they develop, all right? And now, how shall we sort of assess speaking? So we have to bear in mind situation, participants, ends, act sequence, key, instrumentalities, norms, and genre. This has become more important, especially in virtual learning, where we deal with all sorts of genres that students are interested in, all right? Now, we need to grow from the skill-based practices that we have that are very important, but in CLIL, we need to sort of delve much more into this knowledge, not only declarative knowledge, but the procedural knowledge students have. So that is also very important. Sometimes students care so much about the ability to speak, but how about the content of what they speak about? So that's something that we also need to help them, especially in CLIL. Now, we as students, especially students in my CLIL classes at Javeriana University, when we do CLIL, we do go over these bullet points that we have here. Before anything they prepare, I ask them to reflect on this. How would you characterize what you are to do? How would you characterize a poor performance before you do it? Which would be these elements that would tell you have a sort of thumbs up performance, and which are the elements that would tell you that you would perform poorly. And I think that's important to be shared before they create whatever they have to create, so that they know they are against. All right, that's very important. Okay. Now, we also have to bear in mind what's been out there for so long, and we cannot sort of do away with these descriptors of the Language Council of Europe, which students know, and they somehow rely on them for whatever feedback we give them. But we don't need to limit our practices when we give assessment to this. So we have to invite other types of speaking assessment, especially things that have to do with soft skills, interpersonal skills, register and tone. Sometimes we don't offer enough feedback on this, on the phonology of things, and students are also expected to to have some feedback on this. So how polite they are, the tone of their voice, what about stress, tonic stress, or what about prosody and things like that. That is very important to talk about a little bit of the phonological aspects of it. And in CLIL, that's important because how you transmit the message is as important as the message itself. All right. And we now include elements like discourse management and lexical resources, which were not included probably 25 years ago as much as they are now. And when we do CLIL, lexical resources are very important. Students care so much about this grammatical resource, what we call language in use, but we need to talk about the collocations and the semantics of what they say. And that is also very important to give feedback on lexical resources so that students can sort of move away from Netflix or Disney English and they move into more professional English. And that's something that we need to work on. Now, writing is, much more nuanced. So we need to bear in mind social environments, physical environments, the working memory and work on these aspects. So it's much more nuanced and we have more elements like motivation and cognition to deal with. While in speaking, we can be more spontaneous, in writing, we do have to be articulate and we have to help them become articulate. All right, so we need to present, and I do this, the different discourse modes that we have in writing. So we present this, and we ask students to choose which they want to do for CLIL. I try to go for this, persuasive and argumentative, because it's, for me, the most nuanced of all. And then I share these criteria before they set out to doing any of their tasks. So they have to bear in mind these criteria, which I borrow from this university, which they like, and they feel they can comply with some of these elements. I also share this one, which has to do with four bits, how they present things, the content they have, and whether they can do it all or not. Then I also shared this one, which is more about, the kind of arguments they develop. So this is about the content of the writing, and that helps them a lot, especially about this bias, which happens a lot in writing, so that they can recognize it. So this is more about content. And if they are low or they don't have a high command of English, sometimes I share it in Spanish, which is also very good for them, especially if they are still A2 or B1, because that has happened in my training. Some people are not very good at writing, and my remit is not to make them feel bad, but to support them. So I share this, okay? I also shared this one, which has to do with levels of appropriateness, extensiveness, and perspective. This has more to do with style. So as you can tell, I have one on content, one on style, one on language use. So I use these different assessment procedures. All right. Now, 2, how should we go about assessment in CLIL? So it's very important to understand that the purpose of assessing CLIL practices has more to do with content and the ability to integrate knowledge into something. So it goes a little bit beyond the language itself. Which are the problems we are experiencing at the moment when we do this? Well, how we assess content, which aspect of language should be assessed. That's also a question we need to ask ourselves. And what happens with those students who are weak in language skills but good at content? And this is something we need to offer students plenty of support in. Okay, now very quickly, which types of assessments are the most relevant to assess students in a CLIL classroom? So this is not a biggie, and this is not rocket science. We definitely go for A. And why? Because we need to assess curricular content, task-based learning, work evidence, the strengths and areas of improvement are key to do this, but work in progress is much more important. It made them feel that this training is ongoing. So we have to sort of move away from these can-do assessment strategies that we have and go more into skill-based practices, and probably also these soft skills sort of practices, which are much more important. All right. Now, how to assess content and cognition, and this is the third part of the tier. All right. And well, and here it's important, I present this to students and I ask them to understand that CLIL, although, you know, it's not assigned to a postmodernist perspective, it does share some of the underpinnings of the postmodernist perspective, in that one size does not fit all features very highly. So there is not just one answer for everything, pretty much like back in the 70s or 80s, where a communicative approach or notional method were leading. Now we are in a post-methodological era, where one size does not fit all prevails. And I share these reflections on why CLIL works more on content and cognition. And I talk about the inclusivity and the flexibility of the content. So the teacher does not provide the answer for everything. It is a mutual sort of support environment, as it were. All right. And I also explain to them that CLIL and the way I will evaluate, assess their performance, it has to be in keeping with what we call bigs and caps, which is everyday language and academic language, which is also very important. And that's why content is relevant here. Content appeals precisely with the CALPs, all right? This academic notion and this world knowledge vision of CLIL, okay? And this is one of the forms I use to evaluate students or assess their performance better. So we assess what they do and what they create in the classes using this grid here, which is a revised Bloom's taxonomy of objectives, which is quite dealing with the cognitive dimension of things. All right. Now, one of the most contested areas is to assess culture in CLIL. And how shall we approach the concept of culture? Very quickly, how do we approach it here? We discuss that culture is a process of individual enrichment. Then it moves into analyzing particular ways of life. It includes this pop culture of what we do in our everyday activities, but it also moves to what makes you a better person and what makes you fit in a group. So we analyze what we understand by culture, and we analyze why is it so contested, and we do this in classes, and we explain that it's about culture is also about personal growth. It's about understanding the ethos of multiculturality and understanding that my culture is just as important as other people's culture, and to also understand the limitations of the concept behind culture, which suggests nowadays that is something pervasive and pernicious, because sometimes one culture prevails over other just because of prevailing economic practices or capitalist practices. So we also analyze issues of how you use culture now to personalize practices, like culture of transparency, a culture of accountability, and a culture of gender, a culture of diversity. And we analyze these aspects in class, and we take them into consideration when we do the assessment. Okay, and we use this grid, one of the grids that we use to deal with this, to demonstrate whether they have this sound understanding of culture in the CLIL materials they come up with. So this is what we use, all right? But we have to analyze the concept behind culture before asking students to assess what culture means. So that's something I do in my classes with students. And the last one is assessing communication in CLIL. Okay, so yes, when it comes to communication, we have sort of three strands: the language of learning, the language for learning, and the language through learning. What are they all about? Well, the language of learning is the language they need. So, as it were, the morphosyntactic structures they use to communicate. The language for learning has to do with the functions that we use in language to communicate, how to ask for something, how to apologize for something, how to ask questions in a class, how to ask questions at the airport or whatever. And the language through learning, which is probably one of the most difficult ones to master, is how we use language to communicate across different arenas, across different subject areas, and across different disciplines. And that's something that is quite difficult to master for all of us. Because we language teachers don't have enough training on this, how to use English, French, German to communicate across different domains and different disciplines. So how to assess that? I use a very old-fashioned communication grid of tactics, which, despite being old-fashioned, it's quite relevant, I find it. And that goes from revealing information to influencing the others with that information. So we work on the information we have, on establishing the dialogue, that communication, two ways of using persuasion. And I use here Aristotle triangle of rhetorics, and it's very important for them to understand that. And probably one of the most important is try to build consensus with the other party we have across. And that's very important, especially how to do consensus building. Sometimes it's not easy to do in an L2 or L3. And finally, and I think I'm doing very good. Sorry, I'm rushing. I look as if I'm being chased by wolves. But this is the last one, I promise. And something that we use in communication is this: how to go from the personal to topic-based practices. Sometimes in communication, whether we like it or not, we tend to attack people sometimes because we fail to concur with whatever they think. And so then we use this grid to evaluate the kind of interaction we have. If we feel that we are being attacked by people's comments, or if we feel that we are being individualized, or if the speaker is actually resonating with us and is sharing things with us, talking to us instead of talking at us, which is pretty much this one. And then we analyze the facts that we share, and we try to focus on a practice that is also fact-based, but it respects and resonates with the needs of the person. So sometimes we use this grid to check how well we've done communication-wise. And that's it. Finally. And this is very, thank you. That's it. 20 minutes. I think I participated in the Olympics of monologues. Thank you very much. That's it. Boof. No te escucho, Maylene. Sorry, no te escucho.
My bad. Thank you, Leonardo, for your presentation. And let's see if we have any questions from the audience.
That's it. Well, I did well. I only went over 3 minutes. The Olympics of talking.
Nick Zimmer is asking you the following question. Do you use content as well as language objectives?
Yes, and I think I did show it. Probably I wasn't very particular about this, but yes, to use content, I try to look into. Probably I show it. Sorry, I would have to go back.
Sure.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Content. Come on. Oh yes. And for content, I use connectionism, and that emergent theory of connectionism. I use it, because sometimes the students, what they do is that they share content that they have found out in different social media, for instance. So, and I will project my screen again, the contents of my screen, sorry. And I'll show everybody what I use to do this, because I do have to train them. So are you looking at my screen as it is?
We are.
Now, I think some people have read this magazine, The Economist. Have you, Maylin?
I have.
Yes, and because this is quality content. So if I want to assess the students' content, I have to tell them how to find good content on the web. So we have to pay for the economist, all right? So I have taught them how to read good content that we don't have to pay for doing this. So let's say we are interested in this. The Supreme Court takes another bite out of the Voting Rights Act. And we want to read this, but we stumble into a problem here because I would have to have a subscription. So then students say, well, I cannot consult this. But that's not true. I have this website that allows you to read this article without paying for it. Voila.
Amazing.
And then I give them a list of good sites so that they can go and look for quality content. And the first thing in assessing content is telling the students how to look for that particular content. And I think then we come up with a grid to analyze whether we actually source the right content and we are dealing with the right content as it is. Because we cannot assess a skill without sort of sharing with students how to master that skill first and how to look for quality content on the web. And CLIL relies a lot on quality content because we share content. Content, I would say, in hard CLIL, content is much more important than language. And for me, it should be like that. I think content should prevail, especially in university education, the language we use. Because in our English classes, French classes, teachers do have focus on language. But in CLIL classes, the focus, for me, this is a particular stance on my part, has to do more with content. All right?
There is another question from Ana Milena Góngora. Thank you, Ana. Did your ML students find any particular challenges in any of these tiers?
Yes, the one on culture is the one that gives them much, because how can we assess culture? And that's why I presented this definition of why the term culture is so contested and contesting in the arena, right? Because how can you assess whether I am understanding culture or whatever? So we have to reach agreements as to how to do that. And I share some articles from the New Yorker, The Economist, and some articles on interculturality. So we understand, we have the same platform to discuss. So it's not my imposition. We first have to share the platform from where we will discuss culture. On the basis of that, we then reach agreements. And I did show a grid where we sort of evaluate important aspects of culture in their presentations or in their material elaboration. All right.
Alrighty.
Thanks for the questions. I had 2 questions. I feel privileged. I'm very happy for this. I've had a tough year, so I'm very happy that you are participating here with me. I've had a very tough year, so this is like very soothing indeed.
Yes.
Thank you very much for everybody.
Perhaps do we have any more questions from the audience so far? No. Okay. So there was
people. Wow, I'm surprised. Sorry, I'm very happy. You see, Marisabel, hello, Ana Milena, Street, and my boss Felipe, Nick, Laura Murillo, Nick. Oh, thank you very much. I feel privileged.
Ana Maria is asking a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So she would like to know how these grades were used. For example, were there chances for any peer evaluation?
Yeah, as earlier, because I did present it very sort of at a flash, but when I mentioned this, where are they? Where are you? Where are you? These.
Well, I'm sharing your presentation again.
All right. So these formative, summative, self, peer, portfolio, and performance, these are the sort of leading 6 assessments in CLIL. And we did some peer assessment indeed, and self-assessment. Probably we didn't have much time for portfolio because I don't have much time for that, but we indeed did self and peer at the beginning and at the end. We did that, yes. Well, we've been doing that. With some groups, it's easier than with others. because sometimes here at Javeriana, I have groups with, let's say, 25 people. So doing self or peer can be time consuming. But when I have 8 or 7 students, oh, that's far easier. And it's a smooth ride. I can do it, it's a smooth ride, I have to say.
Can I jump in regarding the peer assessment? Is there any modeling so they learn how to accurately provide feedback to their peers, to their classmates?
Yes, and that's a very good question, because we have to fine tune that, because sometimes they don't know how to do it. So I have to do some sort of how can I say that, like to model how to provide assessment. So I have to model it sometimes. So indeed, because they might be unaware of how to do that, because they don't want to hurt other people's feelings, or they feel unsure as to how to use the grids. So I do model it. I do like a sort of trial and error with them. Yes, I do that. Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay. Well, it's time to finish this session. Please come back in 5 minutes to start our next presentation. Leonardo, thank you so much for your presentation. And well, let's take this break.
Sending love to everybody. Thank you.